What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview, the #1 podcast in the industry for real estate agents to learn how to get shit done. Make sure to check us out at www.gsdmode.com to check out other GSD Mode podcast interviews and other additional free content, free webinar trainings, and more epic content that I'm always putting out there to help real estate agents like you crush your real estate goals. Just a few quick plugs before we begin. If you are a driven real estate agent that has big goals, big dreams, and want to create greatness, then check out my personal mentorship coaching program at www.90daymastery.com, where you can see how it works, what you can expect, see a ton of testimonials about the massive success other realtors just like yourself have experienced with the program, and learn why thousands and thousands of real estate agents have decided to join my personal coaching program to help them change their business and life forever. All right, so as real estate agents, hands down, by far, the #1 most important tool in our real estate business is our CRM. If you want to use the exact same website and CRM I use that provides you with all my personal follow-up drips that allows my team to generate thousands of leads each and every month and close 2+ homes every single day, check us out at www.perfectstormnow.com to see the best, most effective, and affordable website CRM system on the planet. If you are going to sign up, make sure to go to perfectstormgsd.com. You want to make sure that you go there to register, perfectstormgsd.com, where you can get the registration fee waived and only pay $199 a month. One last quick thing. Your support truly means a lot. If you find these interviews and any other GSD Mode content powerful, please make sure to share it with anyone that you feel can benefit from this content. All right, it is time to jump on into today's GSD Mode podcast interview. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview, where every single week we interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate agents, and straight top badasses that are out there dominating their spaces. They're people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as make a big impact on others' lives while they're here. And that's one of the reasons why they agree to come on and take time out of their day to be here and share all their brilliant knowledge with us. So today, you guys, we are live in our Scottsdale location with a very special guest on the show, a dude that I'm really excited to have on the show. I actually met him about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was at a speaking event that I attended, and he's one of these guys where I don't want this to come off as me sounding, arrogant or cocky, but when you do a lot of these interviews like I do, and you meet a lot of other entrepreneurs, right? You meet so many brilliant minds where it gets harder and harder to get impressed by other people out there, and this is a dude that just got up and blew my mind, man. I was so impressed out of the gate, and I was just so into everything he had to say, and he just blew my mind. I'm like, man, I got to get this guy on the show. So after a couple reach outs and connections, he agreed to come on the show. So I'm really stoked for this. You guys, this is a dude that successfully built and exited from 17 plus companies at a really young age, 38 years old. Owns Paragon Credit Services, which we're going to talk a lot about. Was one of the top lenders in the whole entire country. So this is a dude that is been very successful at a lot of different ventures, a lot of different spaces, but very successful in the real estate space as well. So really stoked and honored to have Mark Hegenbart on the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah,
it was a good. I've been wanting to reconnect with you, so I was excited when you reached out. We connected a little bit at the speaking event, and then you reached out, and I thought, oh, this is good. This is someone I want to know. So
yeah, dude. It was one of those things where at the speaking event that I met you at. You had like 20 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
Right? And usually like after 20 minutes of a speaker, like, all right, that was good, right? But like you were one of those guys, like I was like, what, you're cutting them off? Like I wanted to like hear you go for like 2 hours, dude. You fired me up, you inspired me, but it wasn't just, just the whole inspiration, let's go walk on fire and make us feel warm and fuzzy.
Sure.
Like the information that you brought to the table, I'm like, damn, it made me think of so many holes in my business and things that I'm not doing, which was just so amazing, dude. So before we get into what you're doing today, because I definitely want to talk about Paragon and what you guys are doing today, because it's something like we've talked about off air of, it was something that you were really turned off on as a lender, right, with credit repair and whatever, but you guys have figured out a way to be very successful with it. And when I started crunching the numbers that you gave, like I'm like, dude, there's probably $200,000 or $300,000 of waste that I'm wasting in my business by not doing what you showed us to do. So really excited going into that, because I know that will help all of our listeners. But before we get into that, man, I'm just really intrigued on your story. I know you've done so many things. And so if we were on the clock, like, how did your whole start of entrepreneurship begin, and what was kind of that journey that led you to where we are today?
Sure, man. It's interesting. I grew up in a tiny farm town, and my mom always said, like, you were born in the wrong place. I remember, like, one time when I was a kid, she's like, the stork dropped you off in the wrong place, right? I just didn't fit into this little town where everybody wears camouflage and there's like 2,000 people in the whole place, and I just, and I think the reason is because I just had these kind of bigger visions of wanting to do bigger things and kind of break the mold. My interest is never seeing how I can fit into the mold. It's seeing the mold and going, what would that look like if we move things around a little bit, So I was kind of listful, like through my 20s, man. I did something of like everything, and always throughout there, sometimes worked for other people and help them grow their businesses, sometimes worked for myself. But quickly I kind of figured out that my niche was in two things. One is sales. I love sales. I love being able to take somebody's perception and change it. And that's what sales is about for me, right? Is take somebody as a perception, see a problem they have, and know that I have a solution. But in order to help them get that solution, I have to change their perception a little bit, right? And I think that's what good sales is about, right? It's not about getting a product in someone's hand. It's about creating a solution and then changing someone's perception, right? Because that perception change has lasting impact far past when the product or service is gone, right? So I recognized that right away. And then as I kind of, was able to prove myself as a young man and say, okay, this guy's got some chops, then I did some things for other companies and started working for myself and went, whoa, what I really like is this visionary aspect of coming in and taking something that either already exists or finding a niche space that doesn't exist, and really coming in and kind of disrupting, and I enjoy that, right? Not for the ego boost of like, look what I did, just because I like that creative space, We're going to talk about credit repair, as you said, in a minute here, the company I own, Paragon, and when I wanted to get into the space, my business partner at the time said, you're crazy. We focus on niche spaces, Mark. That's what we do, right? Like, he's like reminding me of how we do business, and I'm like, yeah, this is a niche space. He's like, what are you talking about? There's like 8,000 credit repair companies plus, you know what I mean? Like, and I said, no, but none of them are doing anything for their clients, right? I said, as far as I'm concerned, there's no competition, So, just, I guess, kind of having that perception of the world, right? Is like, let's just look at things a little bit differently,
Yeah, no, I love it, dude. So did you go, because like we're so heavily conditioned, especially when you come from a small town, because I come from a small town as well in the Midwest, 10,000 people, and it's like, all right, get to high school, you go to college, you get a good, like, this was the path to success.
Yep.
Did you fall into that path at all, or did you out of the gate realize, like, man, that's not the box for me?
No, man, right out of the gate, I remember, like, in my early 20s, I'd come home to see my parents, and my dad, bless him, would just be railing on me, like, when are you gonna get a real job? I actually remember this time, right, when I was 20 or 21, and I'd come home to visit my parents, and I had just a couple weeks before bought a brand new Audi, like $45,000, something was like the A6 was at the time. And I'd driven it home, and my dad was railing on me again during dinner, and I just had enough, right? So I remember standing up and going to the window and being like, do you see that? I wrote a check for that. You know what I mean? Like, where's yours? You know what I mean? It was probably the wrong reaction. I was like a young kid, and I was feeling really defensive, but I just never fell into that mold, and I was just, and I had no interest in it, and not that the people in my town weren't good people, but I just looked around me and I just said, there's like this box that everybody's fallen into. And like you said, the path was the same, right? It was like complete high school, go to college, get a degree, get a job, work your way up. You know what I mean? And I just looked at that and I said, I can't do that. Yeah. Like I just can't do that, right? And as I grew older, this thing kind of, formed in my mind. And today it's something that every day, literally, I focus on. I tell our clients this and my employees, which is like, my thought every day is one reoccurring thought, right? And this started for me pretty young, which is like, if I die tomorrow, am I going to be happy with what I've done up till today? And if the answer is no, then I got to keep pushing towards that, and I just knew being in that box was going to be a no answer forever.
Yeah. Now to come up with that reflection question, because it's so powerful, right? Because we're in a society now where people spend more time designing their grocery list than they do their life plan.
Yep.
And not asking those, and I get it, our brains are meant to defend ourselves, and like it's scary having those kind of morbid death, those regret questions. But when you look at like greats like the Jeff Bezos, he talks about that question all the time.
Right.
Like, is this something I'll regret? Yes or no? Is that on that regret list? And I mean, did something come up at some point in your life where like that clicked or hit, or was it just something that just kind of naturally started happening where you'd have those kind of, we bring up in a podcast, like, it's a deep freaking question, and you meet very few people that have those internal conversations every day.
Yeah. If I was to be 100% honest, I would say it was a slow boil. And the honesty piece comes from me kind of being vulnerable in this moment. And I grew up in somewhat of an abusive household, and I grew up in a town where I thought people's perception of the world was rather abusive to themselves than the people around them, right? Like if like deep Midwestern, there's kind of this undertone still of racism and, homophobia and things like that, And so I actually, what spurred this is I read an article on Jim Henson when I was a really young man in my early teen years. And I knew something was wrong with my environment, but I had no perception on what could be different. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I always say this about people, right? Which is like, I grew up in a somewhat abusive household, I don't blame my parents, right? You only have the tools you have in your toolbox. That's it. It's all the tools you have, and your perception is based on your experience and the tools you get from those experiences, right? So my perception was that something was wrong, but I didn't have any other tools. I didn't have any other thing to look at and go, well, this is what life could be like. This is what kind of community I could live in. These are the friends I could have. I just knew something was there. And I read this thing about Jim Henson. Most people don't know this, but Jim Henson devoted his entire life to changing the world. He actually believed until the day he died that one person could change the minds of everybody on the planet. And he knew that adults were too hardwired. So the whole reason that the Muppets and all the stuff he existed with kids existed is because his plan was not to create content for kids initially. It was to create peace and understanding of diversity and how our differences could help us make the world a better place. But he decided early on that adults were too hardwired. So he went to kids. And the guy devoted years to Kermit the Frog initially, who was a lizard, not a frog. And he was literally like a sock puppet with like these eyes drawn on, right? And because everybody thought he was a nutbag. Yeah. Nobody would pick him up, and everything just progressed from there, but he kept on that. I read this, and actually my first tattoo was like I was under legal age actually, but knew a tattoo artist in the town, and I got Kermit the Frog right here on my arm. Like, I needed a reminder, like I know there's something different, and I was afraid that what I was surrounded by was going to consume me. And so I had to like put this thing on my body to be like, look at this every day and remind yourself that there's something different out there, So it kind of, I think, started with that. And then I left the small town as soon as I could, kind of went out and ventured into the world and moved all over, lived in the South, lived in the Midwest and stuff, and kind of went all over. And that perception of mine that kind of turned into that question of like, am I going to be happy if I go today?
Yeah, that's so dope, dude. But in order for that to happen, like your mindset, because most people that grow up in a family like that, in an area like that, they have wreck the rest of their lives in this victimhood mindset.
Right.
Yeah, right? But like dudes like you that go out there and create massive success, you have a winner mindset, right? Where you take 100% full responsibility and you're not going to blame anything of that. Is that something that was instilled at you at a young age, or like how did, because even at such a young age, how do you not blame your parents for your environment? How do you have that kind of knowledge and that,
I mean, I think then I didn't realize it as much, like when I was a teenager, as I started to in my 20s, and then my early 30s really, brought it into scope for me. But I always say this, like, I wouldn't trade a moment of that environment for anything, right? Because I am who I am today. Yeah. Every piece of who I am is a result of perceptions and tools being added into that box, right? And I'm really happy with where I am and where I'm going. But I'll say this, like, growing up in that environment did a lot for me. I'm one of the hardest workers I know, right? And when you saw me speak, I mean, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but a lot of people tell me what they like about when I speak, and you kind of brought up, it's not about let's go walk on hot coals and hoorah rah. Like, I've been in sales my whole life. I've heard every piece of hoorah rah there is. I got no time for it, really. You know what I mean? What I want to hear is like, hoorah rah, and this is exactly how we get there. And so you notice when I speak, I do a lot of numbers. Yep. This is how you break down the numbers. This is how you follow the path, right? Because for me, like, that's the focus, is like, cool, I'm excited about getting somewhere. you know, right? Now, like, how am I going to get there? You know? So, my father was like the hardest working dude, man. Like his punishments were epic, right? Like epic, you know what I mean? Like we lived in the forest and I'd get in trouble when I was a teenager. My dad would make me like wash and wax the four-wheeler, and then he'd disassemble parts from the engine, like take the spark plugs out and stuff and like park it in front of the garage and then be like, there's 5 acres of wood you can haul by hand. You know? Like, hey, we own 4 chainsaws. You won't be using any of those. Here's an old rusty saw, you know what I mean? Get to work, right? So like what I learned early on is that hoorah-rah doesn't get you very far. Yeah. It makes you feel really good. But at the end of the day, you've got to dig deep and you've got to figure out a plan and how you're going to get there. And when I was younger, my only plan was work hard. That was it, you know? And I would walk in and to any situation with confidence, knowing that I would beat out most of my competitors in that space because I was just willing to work hard, you know? And to be honest, I mean, that was most of my 20s, right? And it wasn't, you know, looking back now, I'm like, wow, I was a dumb kid. Like, meaning that I put in 6 times as many hours on everything probably as I needed to if I would have stepped back and looked at the steps a little more. But, you know, that's where it started. And then it just progressed into me learning a little bit more about like, okay, this hard work thing can really set me apart from my competitors. Because I'll be honest with you, and I mean, this sounds kind of nasty to say about the world in general, but I just think we've lost a bit of that kind of hard work. Yeah. You know, I always kind of laugh because people rail on about how we love America and we kind of have this nationalist society. I don't think we realize how much nationalism we have, you know, how much we love America. But like America was built on really the backs of hard work, right? So a lot of ingenuity involved as well, but it was on the backs of a lot of hard work. So, you know, knowing that and coming from a small town, you know, I don't know how it was where you grew up, but small towns have a lot of that. It was all farming where I was, you know, and, so just kind of starting with that and then through working hard, starting to ask myself real questions about like, okay, the hard work is working well, but like where it's got a ceiling on it. You know, I started to meet a ceiling about in my early 20s, you know, where I was like, okay, well, I've done some things. I've done some big things for my age, but like now I'm kind of at the ceiling, right? And do I want to continue to work 80 hours a week for the rest of my life? Or is there a reality I should be thinking about down the road that this is going to start to come back on me, you know?
You can only pull so many all-nighters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that just got me to start asking myself, okay, what questions should I be asking that I'm not, you know? And that's why today, whenever you hear me speak or whenever you see me consult on business projects or whatever it is, I'm always like, okay, let's look at what you have, and now let's just look at every step and see how we can make it more efficient. Yep. You know, one of the prides of my credit repair company is we run about 65% less staff than anybody else in the industry per the result.
Yep, I love that, dude. So yeah, because it's as you said, man. I mean, hard work only. There's 168 hours a week. We can't change the fact of that. Right. You can only tap yourself out so much. So there is an element of working hard and learning to work smart. And you know, one thing that I see out there of I don't know if it's a fad or whatever, but with the Gary V's and the Grant Cardones of the world that are, you know, grind, hustle. And I get where they're coming from because they're talking to a lot of people that are maybe in corporate wanting to transition into business, but that grind only takes you so far, right? So when you had that discovery of, hey man, I got to go out there and work hard, and that can be a great asset, but I got to learn to work smart. And you know, there can be an element where working hard can also it can be a virtue and a vice. Yeah, right? Like knowing what you know now, can you just kind of elaborate on, you know, because a lot of our listener base are starting out entrepreneurship and they think, you know, about the grind. Yep. But that's how also a lot of us like reward ourselves. We think it's just all about putting the 80-hour weeks, right? Can you kind of elaborate on what you know now, like what that means to you as far as working hard and working smart?
Yeah. And I think this is a really good thing for like a really great topic for realtors as well, right? So, well, I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but up till last November, I owned one of the largest commission advance companies for realtors in the United States, and I sold that to my business partner, Stuart, right? And he still owns and runs that company. It's called Residential Advance. And I bring that up because most people would be shocked at the average income of a realtor in the U.S., right? It's much lower, in my opinion, than it should be. Right? And it's not because the deals aren't out there. I mean, clearly, you've built an extremely successful business here. I walk around your office. There's just agents pumping. I mean, as I just did the little walk through, you know what I mean? So clearly, I mean, the deals are out there. The money's out there to be had. I think part of the problem is that there's not a lot of like direct growth and business training available for realtors, right? You work for yourself essentially, you know? And so while there may be offices like yours that provide tools and stuff like that, I think as a whole, it's kind of like when I look at the mortgage industry. If you talk to the average loan officer, they don't know credit nearly as well as they think they do. And that's because there's no mortgage company that focuses on that training, right? So what realtors hear is they hear, okay, you now work for yourself and you got to grind, right? Like the Gary V's, and they hear all these motivational speakers, you got to grind, you got to grind, you got to grind. That works, but you just brought it up. Like you have what is it, 36,400 seconds in a day, right? Like I do this sometimes when I have conversations with like my hardworking employees, you know, who are talking about numbers or like how sales have fallen off or something, you know, and they'll be like, dude, I'm putting in 80 hours a week, right? And I'm like, that's not your problem, right? Your problem is that you're in such a fear mentality about not hitting whatever goal is right here, like whether that's your commission check for the month or how many deals you got to hit or your carpet, like whatever that is, you're so focused on that what happens is you turn to this broad spectrum of my job is to grind, you know, and you're not really taking a look at and taking time to put systems in place to really do something and then look back on it, determine what the results were. Right? You know, it's like I've done a lot of consulting for small businesses over the years. And every time I walk in, somebody will throw something at me like, oh, we're doing this direct mailer piece, you know, and I'd be like, great. How many times have you done that? Oh, we've done it 20 times before. Great. What are your return numbers? Well, they're about, you know, and then I get this like, oh, they're about 2 to 8%. I'm like, that's not a number.
2%, like
you know what I mean? Like throw a basketball at a hoop 100 yards away. That's what you're doing. You know what I mean? But the reason they're doing that is because like they're afraid. Right? And so they want to hit these goals and they're afraid that if they stop working, you know, and our idea of work is like, we take this core of what we do for a living, right? Like in the real estate industry, I got to, you know, go out and dig up leads, you know, I got to take those clients around and, you know, get them sold on whatever home they like. And then I got to get them through the mortgage process. So yeah, that's the core of the business, right? But what happens is, I guess what this boils down to, I'm kind of taking a long route around here, is that people work too much in their business and not enough on their business, right, is my experience. And I'm guilty of that too sometimes. I got to smack myself around and be like, what are you doing, you know? And part of that's we want to control it. We believe that we do it best. No one's going to do it as good as we do, so there's no way to hand it off to anybody else. There's all these pieces of it. But at the end of the day, if you spend all your time grinding, usually that means working in your business. And when you're working in your business, it's kind of like, you ever notice how you give your friends like the best advice? You know what I mean? Or like you give your friends the best relationship advice, but for some reason that doesn't happen in your own relationships. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that in the box versus that out of the box concept. When you take time to push that fear aside and go, I know how to do that thing, you know, and I can do more of it. But again, 36,400 seconds, whatever in a day, like there's a cap on that. So I need to do what's right for my business and step out and focus on the business from outside of it, right? And I think if people took a little more time to do that, you know, you'd have a lot better results. I also think that I'm a metrics Nazi, I call myself, you know, like I know every metric about my business that you could possibly imagine, even insane stuff that you'd be like, why is that in your head? Do you know what I mean? And to me, that's important, you know, because then we know what works. I see so many people working so hard in the mortgage and real estate space and really overcomplicating things and not getting the result they want and being frustrated at the end of the day, right? And it's like, well, how much time are you putting into creating systems to really track what you're doing down to the most insane level so that you can make those little tweaks? And the answer is usually none or not enough.
Yeah.
You know? And it's unfortunate, you know? Like, you know, I think that's like the number one skill that people could probably, you know, that really, it's what helps me the most, you know, like whenever one of my business is struggling, I stand back and say, okay, like my initial response is to do what? Dive into the business, right? And get to work and like go talk to my people and get an office and make calls and like, you know, get in the business. But usually that's the wrong thing, you know, that's the wrong thing. It's kind of like, you know, Warren Buffett will always tell you like, don't follow the dumb money. When everybody's selling, don't sell. You know what I mean? It's that same thing. Like that's your natural reaction, but you should be doing the opposite.
Yeah, because I mean, businesses, man, we get so emotional in our own business and it's tough. I mean, they're like children to us, right? But the only way to not make an emotional decision is to truly know the numbers. It's the only way you can make a smart strategic decision. And
that's right.
And I get it, entrepreneurs, realtors, that's the unsexy fun thing. Yeah, right. Filling in
Super
spreadsheets and I'm as guilty as anybody. It took me about 5 years of my career before I started tracking, even though every coach and every mentor always told me to track my numbers, but it took me going through enough pain where I was ready to quit, right? Because I was sleeping at the office half the week and I'm like, dude, this isn't the lifestyle I want. Even though the money was great, like I was ready to go from making 700 grand a year back to 40 grand a year because my life got so terrible. Now, of course, I didn't really want to quit and leave that money,
right?
Right? But the only solution became, like, to solve the problem was to start tracking and do the instant power that brings you. Right? It was due to over 50% of the shit that I was doing wasn't necessary. Right? Like I went through 5 years of pain and like literally I'm in the delivery room with my wife while she's, in the bed trying to hold her hand while I'm pecking out emails, dude. Right? Like doing dumb shit like that was all unnecessary. And it's all because I was too stubborn to not go out there and track and treat my business as a business. And for those that do it, it becomes a game changer. So I love it, man. So what then leads to you getting in the loan business, which I know then kind of led to the idea of credit repair?
I'll answer that. I was going to say one more thing on that last piece is like, it's the 80-20 rule, right? And I would encourage anybody like listening to this to do this exercise, right? Whenever I've gone into, I do a lot of consulting, as you know, and when I've gone into consult on projects, one of the first things I usually do is say, okay, let's take a look at your client base, right? And generally, because one thing that needs to happen is for change to happen, we need resources of some type, right? Money, people, whatever the heck it is. And usually when I'm going in, the last thing someone wants you to do is go, by the way, I need you to dump $1 million into your business. So for me, I try to find where those resources already are that we're using poorly, right? So what I always tell people is like, if your business is stagnant, stop and take a day, like just a full work day if you need to, and look at your clientele base, right? And almost every business, you can fire a good percentage of your clients and increase your business, right? Because 20% of your clientele is making you all the money. And the funny thing is, when we really analyze it, like in my experience, those people cause you the least problems, right? You know who your top, like your top referring people are, where your top lead sources are, if I ask you right now, and they're probably the easiest, they cause you the least amount of problems. And then this 80%, which is where you make the least money overall, is usually where you spend the most time, right? So when I just wanted to like encourage anybody, like if you're feeling stagnant, that's generally a good place to start. And business owners are always like really hesitant, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna fire all these clients. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're gonna lose this. I'm like, yeah, but this is 10% of your revenue and 60% of your resource capacity is taken up here. It makes no sense. Let's fire all these people. We'll go find new clients to replace them that fit into our 20% profile, right? Let's come up with a profile of who we want to serve, And I think that's the other part too, is that we get in trying to move forward, we try to serve everybody, and that's not the deal, right? That's not the deal. The more, in my experience, the more niche you can become, the more you know what that perfect client looks like. You know what I mean? Then the easier it is to grow. Yeah. Right?
Well, when we started the podcast, you talked about as being to be great at sales. It's comes down to understanding human behavior, and the best sales trainers and the best sales people that I've ever met in my life are like, hey, 10% of sales are the features and benefits. 90% is, like you talked about, pain, pleasure, heaven and hell, right? Like everything's emotional, right? And creating that vivid picture of that pain, that vivid picture of that pleasure, and then showing them, articulating a way that you're the best guide to take them from that place of it. And the only way that you can really tap into that is to really niche down, right? Like if you don't know the pain and pleasure, like the pain they're experiencing, you don't know what those conversations are keeping them up at night, and you don't know how to articulate that to them, how can you really go out there and create that success?
You can't.
It makes it tough.
It's impossible. I'll tell you a quick story about that. I recently fired up another business. I saw a huge need that's unmet for people with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, right, which like causes people a lot of pain. It's called SIBO. The short version of the story is I totally forgot this lesson, which is something I preach all the time. This was recently, like 7 months ago. And I spent all this money, brought our marketing team in, said we're doing this, we're building all these funnels, had my buddy who owns a professional company come in and do all these videos for weeks and stuff, I mean, I got, 6 figures into this thing within a few weeks, just like starting to pull the plane up a little bit. And all of a sudden I stopped and I'm like, this is dumb. I'm forgetting my own rule. I don't know what these people's pain is. I have no real concept of it at all. I can read all I want. I brought doctors in on staff, like full time, you know what I mean? And like, I was going at it and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm creating a business just to create a business because I think my skill sets can be put to use and I think I can do really well and grow it. And I'm an entrepreneur. I love doing that, you know? And then it just hit me and I literally called a meeting of my team and I said, I just shut off every asset we own. And they were all like, whoa, what? You know what I mean? I would have shut off all the URLs, all the funnels, all the Google ads, you know what I mean? We were dropping like 8K a day in Google ads. I'm like, we're shutting it all off. You know what I mean? And my whole team was like, what are you doing? And I was like, we're going to fail. We're going to fail. I'm calling it right now. This was a lesson learned. You know, I always say whenever I'm starting something new, I'm going back to school. I'm a farm kid with a high school education. You know, I never went to college or anything, but I always say like my school is, you know, I pay for my school in different ways, you know, which is he's learning. But like I forgot that lesson. Yep. You know, and if you forget that, your business will eventually fail.
Yeah, dude, it's like I did over the last year. I exited from this business recently, but we're doing a lot of consulting for optimal health physicians. Yeah, right. Testosterone replacement therapy and whatever. And yeah, I mean, like in order to nail down that marketing, which again we didn't know until it took a lot of surveying, but to figure out those pain and pleasures. But the number one way to get guys in the funnel, right, ended up being about brain fog. We never really we knew that was something testosterone replacement could solve, but we were going after the sexual component or the strength component in the gym and all these different ways where, dude, our avatar didn't give a shit about that. It was the lack of energy and the brain fog that was the number one thing. So we ended up having to take, like you said, I mean, go 6 figures, 6-figure mistake, right? But it becomes so powerful, man. Love it, dude. Yeah. So, yeah, dude. So then, because it was Quicken that you were with?
So mortgages. I mean, your other question was on how I got into mortgages. I'll be honest with you, man. I went through a really tough time where. So I grew up in a big drinking family. I stopped drinking when I was like 19 just because I was like over it. I don't have a problem with it. I could put down like a fifth right here and we'd sit and have this whole thing. You'd think I was drinking water. But I just don't drink. I just don't enjoy it, you know? And I had a business partner. Basically, I was living in Minnesota. Owned a company there, had just sold it to a guy in Cleveland, and this was a consulting and marketing firm that I owned. And a buddy of mine who owned like a custom car place. I mean, they do crazy stuff, import engines that aren't manufactured in this country and, make built-in wide body kits on race cars and stuff. Him and I used to compete in car audio. We were both world record holders for several years when I was younger, and he was still doing it. And so I sold the company, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to this competition, my last one. I'm going to try to break this record so hard that it stands because I'm taking myself out of this space. I said, cool. He said, will you go with me, man? I know you haven't competed in years, but this stuff's so deep. He's like, I'd love to have your help, and we could win this thing together. And I said, yeah. So I caught his wife cheating on him, and so he lost it like mentally, and he said, okay, I'm going to Arizona to hang out with my aunt and uncle for a couple weeks. He comes back, he's like, I'm moving to Arizona. I said, well, that wasn't what I had in mind. And I said, I got nothing going on. I've never been to Arizona. So sight unseen, we bought a bus. We gutted the whole thing, built custom rig on the back, 2 trailers behind it, and we packed up all of our stuff, both our race cars, and loaded this bus and drove it down here, just for like this epic adventure, And I got here, and long story short is Corey ended up committing suicide, killing himself and his girlfriend. She was pregnant in our home. And that kind of sent me off the deep end, emotionally. So I ended up in a little apartment over on 83rd Avenue, living on milk crates with bottles of liquor everywhere. And one day a friend of mine came in and said, this is not you. She said, you are filled with greatness. I'm not going to sit by and watch this happen. I may have been there for like 3 months at that point, just drinking myself into a hole, And she said, this is not you. She said, get up, and get showered. And she actually arranged an interview for me at Chase Bank. And I went over there. I met with Todd Howard as a hiring manager at the time, and he hired me. And I wrote 53 mortgages in my first 3 weeks. Damn. But I was ready to get up out of that. When it was kind of funny. I said, hey, I'll take the job, but under one condition. I said, I liked it like I'm a metrics guy. So I said, I want to know every loan product. He said, oh, you'll learn that over time. I said, no, I want all the underwriting guidelines today because I didn't start for like 3 weeks. And he said, what are you going to do with them? I said, I'm going to memorize it. He said, it's impossible. I said, no, it's not. So that's what I did over that 3 weeks. I literally 12 hours a day. I sat and memorized every guideline. So by the time I got on the phone, I could just whip through clients. I mean, I could do the DTI calculations on a calculator as I was talking to them and pulling their credit, and you know what I mean? And then just found that I found that mortgages was so much more than just writing a loan if you really dug in and understood it, And I also took a lot of pride in really knowing what I was doing. I watched loan officers around me just, convincing people to take loans that I didn't think were good loans. Like, yeah, you might be saving $150 a month. And if that's what you need, like if that is really, really what you need, not just what you want to go buy some toy, you know what I mean? Then okay. But, I looked at a lot of people and said, that's not really what you need. And it's adding an exponential amount to what you're going to pay for this mortgage, So I really pride myself on writing like good, clean loans and helping people understand the financial side of it. I was I had an interesting time. Chase had a lot of rules, and I didn't really like all those rules, and I didn't abide by all of them. So my boss was kind of constantly saving my job. Like if I maxed out if you had a bunch, like 10 maxed out credit cards and I refied you during the boom, I would make you cut your cards up and mail them to me. I would be like, I will only do this loan for you if you're going to make the right decision, and that's because like I wanted to feel really good at the end of the day. It came back to this Kermit thing, like I wanted to feel really good that I was making some change at the end of the day. So yeah, I did well there, and then Quicken Loans decided to come out here and build a call center, and they recruited me out of there, and that was a great experience. So Quicken actually led me to credit repair somewhat, believe it or not, but. Yeah, so it's a great experience. I love the mortgage industry. I love like the entrepreneurial spirit of it. I love the fact that it's a great space where someone can come from somewhere else in the corporate world and get in, and like even if they're an employee W-2, the way the pay structure is and stuff, like if you've never worked for yourself, that's a great kind of entry into doing so. You know what I mean? Where you're really in control of your own destiny and things like that, And there's a lot of resources if you really want to be good, make to the top that you have to go out and get yourself, And so I love that that's kind of like a transition point for a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, love it, dude. So then I remember at the speaking event, you mentioning that as you built your loan officer, your team, when you were a lender, how if somebody brought you a credit repair, you'd have like Burger King or like fast food resumes, because you're like, man, if you bring me another one of these, I mean, this resume is gonna have to go to another job, right? Because you had such a distaste for them. Yeah. And when you brought the 80-20 story, I was sitting there thinking about how 2 years ago I was sitting there with my ISA, and we dissected our last 12 months, and we were trying to go through our 80-20, and we realized that cutting credit repair, like first-time home buyers, that credit repair niche, because we were doing a lot of ads of own cheaper than you can rent and getting a lot of those in, but the chase of the credit repair, it ended up being taking 80% of our time. That was only producing 20% of our income. Yep. So we decided to give it the cut, and that was kind of been my philosophy until I met you the other day, and then I'm like, oh my god, like there's layers to the.
You're like, this guy just showed me chests of cash I threw away.
Yeah, there's onions to the layer that I didn't know existed to peel back. Yeah, right, and really sharpen down that niche. What though? Because you were kind of the me or your typical realtor or lender that's in that space. Yeah. Because we've been so tainted by it because of what the people in that space that exists out there. It's like we just end up wasting our time, and then we're advertising or asking people to go invest money that they really don't have, that we know is going to be a waste. We don't feel good about it. Plus we're right. But at some point that clicked for you where you saw, man, there's being a huge niche. So talk to us about what that discovery point was where you realized, man, this isn't a waste. Yeah. Right. And then how that led to Paragon.
Well, first I want to clarify your story, right? So, so your listeners, I mean, you already know because you've heard me speak, realize how against credit repair I was. I mean, the fact that I own a credit repair company today is insane. I literally used to have what you're talking about, which is a book of Burger King applications at my desk, because one of my loan officers on my team had a kid who worked at Burger King. And I said, go get me a stack of these, right? So he snagged a stack. And if you sent someone to credit repair, I would rip one off and put it on your desk and be like, I just found out you referred one of our clients to credit repair. You do that again, you better fill that out because you won't be working here. And I mean, my team thought I was nuts, but the problem is, like you said, is that the real estate business is a fickle beast, in many ways. And so when I would refer into credit repair and get bad results, inevitably I was always the jerk. Because I refer the client somewhere, they go there, they spend money, the realtor knows less about credit and the mortgage and stuff than I do, clearly, because that's not their side, right? So they're trusting me. I refer to somewhere, the client comes back, I pull their credit, can't qualify them for a mortgage. Who's the jerk? Yeah. I am. Every single time. It doesn't matter if that client got 97 more collections, whatever it was, I'm going to be at fault, And the problem is that they're just... is that I just couldn't find a good credit repair company. I used over 60. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, think if you've actually used 60 loan officers in your career,
Yeah.
60 different companies to keep track of the results, give them a multitude of clients to try. Because I'm all about, especially credit repair, it's a fickle thing with a lot of moving pieces, and I knew that. So I'm not just going to give you one client, I'm going to give you 10. You know what I mean? So look at the numbers I was doing, and so anyway, I just had enough. I just had enough of damaging my own reputation. And so like you, I was like, we just don't deal with these clients anymore. And then actually what happened was that most people don't realize this, but it's only been since like 2012 that you couldn't actually do credit repair as a mortgage company, like full on beast mode credit repair, but nobody ever really did it, And then Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans, like, this guy's just so outside of the box with stuff he tries. So they like bought a law firm and like this credit repair company or whatever, and jammed it together into this thing called Fresh Start. And through that, through that kind of experience, I went, wait a minute, this looks like it should be able to work. And like my first inkling of that was like, it wasn't this light bulb, it was like sun, where I was just like, wait a minute, I'm seeing things that should work. And so the next question for me is, why isn't it working? Right? And so I owned a couple of companies at the end of my mortgage career. I owned one in Australia and one in British Columbia, Canada. And to be honest, I was working way too much. In fact, in my last 2 years in the industry, I went to the hospital 3 times, 2 of them in an ambulance, because I just like worked myself to death, But I was loving all the things I was doing. And that's a problem with me, is like I get attached to things and I go, as long as I'm creating, I'm loving it. So I decided to move on from the mortgage industry and go focus on these other 2 companies. I love the mortgage industry, but I had really done what I wanted to do there, and I was fine moving on. So and to be honest, and this is maybe a longer story for another time, but I got caught in a civil war for a few months in West Africa, another project I was working on, and so my employment was pretty much going to be done when I came back. Anyway, I was like, I'm leaving for 3 days, and I came back 3.5 months later. I'd been stranded. They shut down the airport. The whole country was in civil war. It was nuts, Yeah. So I started to see the credit repair could work, and then I left the mortgage industry, and then, unbeknownst to me, both of those companies got purchased. I got offers for sale, like right away, like within months. And then I was sitting around going, well, what am I going to do? And there was this thing nagging at me, like, credit repair can work, but I'd never seen it work. And, I love a challenge, that's why I love these niche spaces and stuff, right? So I like disrupting things, And so I said, I'm going to go into this, and that's when I called a buddy of mine, Stuart. And so I went around the country looking for another credit repair company to buy. So I had 2 goals. One is to collect information. I wanted to find out if this stuff could work, but it wasn't working. What was the holdup? I wasn't arrogant enough to think that I was just going to barge into the industry and be like, the savior is here. You know what I mean? And everything was going to work. There were clearly reasons things weren't working, and I wanted to understand those. So I figured the best way to do that was to go around as an investor. So I put together a big bank account to start the company with and bank statements. I went around and said, listen, I've got a large tranche of cash, and I'm interested in either investing or buying your company. And I went around almost a 1.5 years and talked to different credit repair companies, and I started to see very quickly like where this thing was breaking down, and the more I learned, the more excited I got about my own ability to be able to come into the space and like really create change, because at first I wasn't sure, and the more I saw, the more it was just like everything was there, everything could work, and there were clear reasons why it wasn't, so like there's a bunch of dirty secrets about the credit repair industry. I launder them today, right? That our industry doesn't like to talk about. So one is, you want to get in the easiest business ever, get into credit repair. There's no barrier to entry in most states, right? Like in this state, there's nothing. You can literally go right now out of the trunk of your car. There's a company that'll lease you all the software you need for $300 a month, and they'll even give you 120 pre-canned dispute letters that you can hammer the bureaus with and creditors and whatnot, and you don't have to register with the state as a business. You don't have to be bonded. You don't have to be licensed. It's insane.
Man, it's scary.
It's scary. It's beyond scary, and it's especially scary when you think about the following, which is that we as citizens like rely on that 3-digit score,
Yep.
right? it affects so much of our life. One of the things we do we're very kind of low pressure. We're selling clients. There's no value in pressuring. So credit's a very emotional thing, whether people want to admit it to themselves or not. There's no point in pressuring emotional people, right? It just doesn't work. So one of the things we do is we use a lot of infographics, and people are shocked. We have this thing that says, if you just had one credit card with a $10,000 limit, right? You put 10 grand on it today, and then you just paid it off over 5 years, okay? And you never charged it up again. You bought a car today, you paid it off over 5 years, never bought another car your whole life. Now, clearly that's not reality. You're gonna have multitudes of these. But we try to break it down to the simplest thing, like if only this happened, and if you bought one home and paid it off from day one over 30 years, what would the difference look like between a 580 to 680 credit score? And we show people this, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're like, what? And that's so it's scary to me because we have no education on it. We don't understand it. We don't understand how the system works. We don't understand how to work within it. You can't name one high school or college in the country that teaches this stuff because it doesn't exist. And yet it controls so much of our life, so much of who we become, so much of the ability that we have to create change within our own life, right? You have a good income. I have a good income. I assume your credit's probably good. My credit's fantastic. If I lose my job tomorrow, if I lose all my income tomorrow, break my legs, I can go to a bank, they'll give me whatever I want just based on my credit score. But I have that education. If you don't, and the same thing happens to you, what do? Yeah. You go into despair. You can't pay hospital bills. You know what I mean? All this stuff, right? So that's one of the things we really focus on is like helping educate people, And so what I realized when I looked at the space was, one, it was too easy to get in. Right? There was no barrier to entry, which means everybody got into it. Two, it is a vacuum for succubuses, right? And vampires. And what I mean by that is unscrupulous people who want an easy way to make money go, nobody understands credit. All I have to do is be able to sell someone hope. Yeah. Right? That's all I have to do. And hope is a powerful thing. We saw Obama run on it for 8 years, and it worked very successfully, right? Hope's a powerful thing. So when you tell somebody, I know you don't understand credit, Joshua, but I do, let me fix that. And you can sell them that hope. People are willing to give you their money, The problem is if you don't know what the heck you're doing, you're either not helping them or B, and unfortunately we see this a lot, you're causing damage. Yeah. And so when I started to see that, I went, okay, there's a space here, and it's a space that's begging for something honest and real and that gets reproducible results, And then the flip side was realizing that the big barrier here was going to be changing the minds of people like yourself, loan officers and realtors across the country, because when you think of the way something is, like it's a perception thing again. You only like if I ask you to think of a your favorite car, you can only think of cars that you've seen or interacted with. You can't think of cars you don't know exist, right? So when you think of credit repair, you can physically only your brain can only conjure thoughts about what you've seen. And so the industry has just created such a pile of garbage for itself that's what most people think it is. So the challenge for us has been how can we prove to people that this works? And so we started from day one. What we did is I redesigned the business, the way credit repair is done. Happy to answer any questions on it you have. I redesigned the business from the ground up, and I looked at everything not from the credit repairs company's perspective, but from the loan officer perspective. And being a loan officer, it's pretty easy to do that, right? And so what we did is my partner and I went on this kind of journey where we said, okay, as we build this business, here's what we're going to do. We're not looking at cost. We're not looking at the resources it takes to do anything. Our primary driving factor is, what does the end result have to be to make you happy as a loan officer? I say a loan officer, that was our focus because that's where most of our business pours in because they're the one pulling credit, right? Let's get those things down. Commit to doing those things. Then we'll back up and figure out how we're going to get there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like most people I say when they formulate a business, they say let's route out the path that the bus is going to drive, and then as we drive towards the end goal, we'll find people and bring them on board, and we'll find the things we need. What we did with this was different, and we've done it with a couple of other companies, is to say, let's actually get all the things we need right now to get to there, and then we'll figure out what the path is.
Yep.
So it's kind of backwards, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, no, it's well, and when I came to the event to that you were speaking at, it was hosted by a buddy of mine who is one of your lender clients, and a guy that I've known for a lot of years that I really respect and like a lot, Leroy. And he's been in the game a long time, right? And he's one of these guys that, just like a lot of lenders, they use a lot of different credit repair services and industries. And he's like, no, dude, like this dude is legit. And he's the only one.
Yep.
Yeah, right. And after that meeting, I do more due diligence on you guys. It's great for you. It's sad as an industry, right. But it's like, dude, and I guess this is why you went into the niche, because you could dominate it so well. But there's not one out there that does what you guys do and actually gets those
Did you do some due diligence? I'm interested.
Yeah. I mean, just what I could, right?
Yeah.
And because you guys, your client is the loan officer.
Right.
So it made it a little bit harder where I couldn't just pick up realtors that were you guys' service, but just the reviews on you guys and just seeing what's out there. I mean, it's impressive stuff. So can you walk us through, from the real estate perspective, just like you did when you walked those numbers through because I think that this truly should be a department that we all have within our real estate business, and more so today than ever. And the reason that I say that is we've got all these, quote unquote disruptors, these tech companies that are coming and disguise themselves as real estate companies, and they're doing a lot of, massive rebates and doing different things where they're giving back to the consumer. Yeah, right. So if we just make it about the standard things that us as real estate agents do, it's hard to combat maybe like a Redfin, where they're like, hey, look, our realtor is going to open the doors same way. We're going to negotiate the contract the same. Like, you can get all the same services, but we give you 50% of your commission back. Right? So we more so than ever have to think of ways of, well, how do we add tools to our toolbox, as you said earlier, that our competitors don't have. And this is a way, like, I know in these discount services out there that we're all getting compressed with right now, don't have departments and solutions for people that need great credit repair. Like, these are other angles that we as real estate agents can have in our toolbox that can separate ourselves very heavily, right? Where people now appreciate what we've done because they wouldn't be able to buy if what we had didn't exist with those relationships. And I think it could be huge, right? From a marketing perspective to just, as I said, when you start breaking down those numbers, I'm like, dude, I know it's several $100,000 of lost income from us choosing to abandon it instead of going deep into this. But kind of walk us through that, what those expectations are and what realtors, like if they really niche down and focus on this and teamed up with you, whether it was, getting their lender partner to work with you guys and making that stipulation of the relationship of, hey, like if you're doing credit repair, I want you to use Paragon. Kind of walk us through that so they know.
So first, we have a ton of realtors that do this, right? And even when they start working with a new loan officer, we will inevitably get an email that says something like, as we talked about as a part of our relationship moving forward, you'll be sending all my clients to Paragon. Let's set up a meeting type of deal, right? Once they experience what we can do. So I think the first part starts with understanding the numbers, which is what you're hinting at that I spoke about with Leroy Romero's deal, right? Which is, this is like I'm trying to think of how to shorten this down so we don't end up at like an hour here, right? Because I'm a numbers guy. But you need to understand the numbers. So understanding of the difference between how you refer someone, okay, and what those numbers equate to, like how many people are going to sign up if I do this type of referral versus this type of referral, right? And then once you get that nailed down, understanding, okay, out of the people that sign up for credit repair, what percentage of them are going to be ready day one when they're done with the credit repair process? What percentage of them are ready in the next 6 to 9 months? And what can I do to increase each of those percentages and make those happen, right? So I'll give you an example. Most people that are actually close a mortgage are not ready at the end of the credit repair process. Now, part of the problem here is our industry doesn't want to be honest about this, okay? They want to come in and paint blue skies to go, Joshua, send me those clients, brother, and when they're done with us, they're going to be ready to go because that's what you want to hear. Right? One of our claims to fame, I mean, one of the things that why we've done so well is because whenever I go out and speak in front of a big group of loan officers at a company or, one of my field reps does or whatever, the first thing we say is, we're going to start this by dispelling all the myths you believe about credit repair. Because until we get those out of the way, we can't start this relationship and we spend like 15 minutes just going, you guys have all been told this, who believes this? Yep, it's a lie, right? You know what I mean? And getting down to what the truth is. So part of that thing is understanding that A couple of things. One, credit challenge clients are your best referrers ever. You just said it. You get someone into a home. One of the things we talk about, you've heard me talk about this at Leroy's event, which is the psychology of a credit challenged person, right? If you have credit challenges, you get pretty much treated like crap everywhere you go, right? You pay twice as much for the same car you and I do. It's got 3 times as many miles on it. You're late on a payment. No one cares. You're racking up late fees. Like, there's all of these things. You know what I mean?
Well, there's probably a story that led to the credit in the first place.
Right.
And then you just keep getting defeated.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like you said, the gut punch.
Right. You take this baseball bat to the head, which is what starts it all. Usually there's some event or a series of events, and then, like you said, then people just keep gut punching you at every step. And eventually you kind of give up. So one thing that realtors have to work on is understanding this and going, because I hear this all the time. We hear this all the time, right? Well, I talk to these people and they're just not even motivated. Well, why do you think they're not motivated? If I tell you you're fat every day of your life, eventually you believe you're fat. You know what I mean? And you don't have, the motivation to clean up your diet and get in the gym because you've been told you're fat. I've created a belief that you are fat. That's who you are. It's part of your identity. The same thing happens with credit, right? So the first thing is just understanding that some empathy needs to be had, right? The second part is filtering. Okay. So you've got to be working with a credit repair company. And this is one of the big things we focus on with our partners of like how to help you filter people into the process properly, because there are a section of people that are just not ready to make those decisions. And I'm going to get to how that pertains to you're going to close most of them after credit repair in a second. So but you should be working with a good credit repair company that can help you with that. Okay. One of the biggest, as I go through these next couple of steps, I'm going to talk about a few things, and you'll see that one of our focuses is helping real estate partners and loan origination partners reduce the time impact they have, or what we call the frictional cost of working with credit challenge borrowers. Because like you, people go, dude, I'm spending 80% of my time here and I'm not making money. It doesn't have to be that way, right? It doesn't have to be that way, but you've got to work on the business and put the process in place. So the first thing is filtering people properly. The credit repair company should be helping you with that, of how to determine who's a good candidate, who's not up front, right? The second piece is really working with a credit repair company that not only knows what they're doing, but, and here's what I'm going to say, you can't figure that out, okay? Yeah. You have no way to figure out because you don't know enough about credit repair. I can assure you. I don't care if you've been in this game for 20 years as a realtor. You just don't know, okay? Because you've never done it. So, but one thing you can do is look at how the company charges, okay? So this would be like my 90-second elevator pitch on our company, right? And what we really, one of the big things we do differently is like, most of credit repair looks like this. The client comes in, they pay a monthly or a startup cost, like a setup fee, and then the client pays a monthly fee for every month that they're in process, okay? So what is the goal for the credit repair company from day one? Keep someone in process as long as possible, right? That is the revenue model. So I always tell realtors, when you're talking to a credit repair company, whatever sales they're using to convince you they're great and they have the next secret sauce, forget it all, just look at how they charge. Okay. And if they charge your client a monthly fee, but you sit across from them and believe them when they pitch you some story about how they're going to get the client back to you as quick as possible, then you're agreeing to be pitched a story, I built my revenue model completely opposite of what I'm selling you on, right? So what we do is, we charge for performance. Our clients only pay for things that get repaired or removed. Right? That's what they pay for at the end of the day. So what that does is now I've aligned our goals, right? So you've got to be able to filter the people. Once they're filtered, you got to push them to a credit repair company that has the same goals as you do. The realtor, the loan officer, and the borrower always have the same goals. In credit repair, credit score up, out of credit repair, end of story. If the revenue model does not match on the credit repair side, I don't care what they're selling you. It's not going to happen, right? It just doesn't match. They would have built their company differently, So for us, it's the opposite. If we get rid of 10 things, we get the same amount of money, whether it takes us 5 months or 2 months, right? But the overhead changes the longer they're in process. So our goal is now aligned with yours to get them the heck out of process as fast as possible, right? So once you've got them in process, then here's the next thing that happens is that there's nothing in place for follow-up. Okay? And there's a couple reasons for this. One is that most credit repair companies are highly under-resourced. They don't have the right systems in place, and they rely on humans too much to do the job of what really should be doing machines. And I'm not a proponent of let's not hire anybody or create jobs, but there's some things that software can do a lot better than humans. Like, for instance, on-time communication. Okay, you don't want to trust a human to do that. Humans are, ever-evolving living creatures. I want a software that gets you everything on time, So you need some type of communication system that's guaranteed and built in from the credit repair side, and then you need to be able to leverage that for follow-up. You can't just take someone. When I tell you, you can't have a piece of the American dream, that's what you say when you deny someone for a home, and we forget that, right? That is a serious gut punch. So you one of two things. One is you got to be very sure about the path. You got to be very confident that referrals got to be, I trust this credit repair company. All my clients go. You've got to create that because you've got to give them some hope again that's real, right? And then through the process, you can't just leave them alone. The average, you ask the Attorney General of the U.S., they'll tell you the average credit repair client is in process for 13 to 16 months. Yeah. Ours are 5 months and under every time because that's the law allows you to do it that quick if you're more concerned about doing that than making revenue. And so we do that. But even at 5 months, you just toss someone over the fence with no communication whatsoever. Like, do you really care about them? Or do you care about your commission? Now, again, this gets into that fine area of, but I don't want to monopolize my time. And that's where a good credit repair company like ours that has a lot of employees that have worked in the mortgage and real estate industry should be stepping in and advising you, not on ideas, right? Not on grandiose concepts on how to reduce your time impact, on exact processes, right? To reduce your time impact, And then the final understanding really of converting credit repair is understanding this. Remember I said you're going to convert most of them, not when they're done with credit repair. Okay, you're going to convert most of these people into homeowners 6 to 9 months after they're done. There are quite a few you can convert up front if you're working with a good credit repair company, but most of them are going to be 6 to 9 months. And the reason is, it goes back to the psychology piece. If you have bad, how old are you?
37.
Okay, we're almost the same age. I'm 38. So if I take you at 37 and I push you into credit repair, how many years of bad habits do you have?
A lot.
Probably a lot. You didn't get bad credit yesterday, okay? So what people in our industry, and I say our as a real estate industry, forget again is a psychology piece. You're not just sending someone over to engage in credit repair. You're sending someone to literally cut off the neurosynapses they use every day in their brain to make decisions and rewire those things and then harden those new neurokinetic pathways to literally a new way of living and handling their finances. And that is not easy. It's not easy. And you're expecting someone to do that in 5 months, right? So what the other big problem we see is at the end of credit repair, loan officers or realtors go, well, Johnny didn't do what he was supposed to do for the last 5 months. You know what I mean? Because we provide a report. And this is also something really interesting. Most people call the credit repair industry the black hole. Communication's poor, and at the end of the process, this is how you turn it into a jerk like we talked about earlier. Johnny, your client, will come back, you pull credit, he can't qualify, right? A lot of times that's because Johnny didn't know what he was supposed to do. But I got really sick of telling my realtor partners that because eventually they look at me and go, maybe it's Mark. Yeah. I'm getting this very obtuse answer about all my clients. All my clients can't suck, right? You know what I mean? And being a realtor is more emotional than being a loan officer. I'll tell you that right now because you have more resources invested, right? As a loan officer, it's your time, but a lot of times you never even meet the client. Right. As a realtor, you're in the field with them. You're picking out their dream home. You're talking about where their socks and underwear are going to be stored, where their kids are going to play. You know what I mean? And so now without any hard data to know what happened with just an obtuse answer of this client didn't do what they were supposed to do, eventually you start getting upset. And that affects the loan officer realtor relationship as well, right? So what we do is we provide a written report that's completely compliant for any referring party to share with anybody else, even a stranger on the street, right? But you know what client it's about because you referred the client over, right? And the report tells you everything that happens. Now, this is where you can really pick up a big chunk of credit repair clients where you can have an easy conversation with Johnny and say, hey, Johnny, I noticed that you didn't do all of the things Paragon needed you to do while you're in credit repair and you're still not qualified for a home, right? And I recommend the realtor and loan officer get on the phone with the client at the same time, right? As a supportive team, not as a gang up, right? And say, listen, if you're willing to do these things, we're willing to keep walking the path with you. Right? So if you can help us understand why these things didn't get done, no judgment, you know what I mean? And if we can lay down a path with specific dates, because we tell you what needs to be done yet at Paragon, right? To do these things, we'll keep working with you. And then you put filters in place, right? If you call Johnny and he had 3 things to do and he completed 1, I recommend following up with him at least one more time. And if he's marching down that path, keep following up because he's going to close on a home. You can close them on a home, right? But what happens most time is, this communication doesn't exist anywhere else. We're literally the only company that does this today, right? And so what happens is you get the client back, you pull the credit, it doesn't qualify. You want it, I'm speaking from the loan officer's side now because that's mostly my perception and where I lived. And now my realtor partner's gonna be unhappy, right? So what I do is I call Bob's Used Credit Repair and I say, hey, what happened? I spent a half hour on the phone taking notes. Then I got to call the client, settle them down. Call the realtor, settle them down. Convince them it's the client's fault, right? You know what I mean? And because I'm trying to save my relationship. I mean, this is the reality of what happens, right? And then we kick Johnny down the road and say, well, he's just a bad apple. And here's what happens. See all the time I just spent? Now I turn into you. Or now I turn into me, you know, where I look down the road and I look back and I go, I'm spending all this time. It's such a time suck, you know. The industry's not providing the resources. But once you have that resource, you can have the conversation with the client and then start to put filters into place to figure out who is that percentage I can save. Most people don't realize that about 42% on average of clients that come out of credit repair that don't qualify for a home are ready in the next 6 to 9 months. 42%. Yeah. That's a big chunk, my man, you know. That is a big chunk, right? And I'm sorry, let me clarify that. That's 42% of the people that weren't ready to qualify day one. So it's even a bigger chunk of the whole, right? You know, so I think just understanding that psychology and then putting systems in place is the really important thing. I give this like pitch all the time, which is that the real estate industry is really simple and we make it really complicated, right? It's just build a bunch of funnels, shove your leads in the top of the funnels, create filters through the funnels. And if people would stand back and do that around their credit challenge clients, they'd notice why you can go on Google and see that we are the highest rated company in the industry. And you see loan officers on there like Leroy, right? You know, who are like, I won't touch anybody else. Nobody else can. I don't know if you heard Leroy and I going back and forth on this, but Leroy left us at one point in time, right? He forgot, and I'd been pushing him to work his numbers better. In fact, I think he does enough business, he should have a full-time salaried person handling credit challenge clients. I did full write-ups myself, sent him to him and said, here's what your numbers look like today. Here's what they would look like if you were following my process. He didn't do that. And the numbers kind of slowly slipped and then he went away. And then I ended up calling him going, what's going on, man? You know? Well, you know, and there's a blah, blah. And I kept saying, you need to send your business back here. You're making a mistake, Leroy. And then finally I pushed him enough. And then one day he went, okay. And he dug in with, I think, Bree, who works for him. And they looked at the numbers and he called me and he said, we've never closed a credit repair client unless they went through your company. Yeah. He said, never in the history of what we've done. So we had no idea we were not tracking matrices like you told us to. Yeah. You know? So, I mean, that you know, makes us proud, of course.
And the cool part about everything that you're saying, too, with that follow-up is, say with CRMs that exist out there and the technology that exists, it makes it so simple.
Right.
Yeah, right? Like, we all have the tools. It's not like you go out there and develop software to do this. Right. Like, your very basic, standard CRM, entry-level CRM can allow you to do this. Yep. Yeah, right? And you guys have...
Yeah, you don't need anything crazy. I'm glad you really brought that up. To be honest, if you had to, you could do this in Excel spreadsheets. Yeah. All day long. And still know your numbers right down to the point, you know?
Yep. Well, and then the cool thing with you guys, because you have credit down to a science with this, if it's like, hey, we need to do these 3 things, like, you know their credit, you know what these 3 things are going to do to their credit. Yep. And so it's not like, okay, hey, do these 3 things, we guess this will work, we think this will work. Yep. It's like, so, and I think, you know, something that you said earlier, man, is because you talked about, hey, if it's pain and pleasure, before they can hear that pain and pleasure conversation, we got to switch their perspective. And I've never really thought about this until this podcast and hearing you speak, but changing the way, like us as real estate agents, when we're having those conversations with those clients, yeah, right, and never saying, oh, you're denied, you know, right, it's like, all right, like, if we know what their pain is and what homeownership solves for that pleasure, you know, it goes back in that conversation of, you know, it's like, okay, so, you know, if you know, making like, maybe they're moving because they're commuting an hour each way to work, and that's in 2 hours out of their day away from their kids. Yep. You know, hey, you know, if that's something that's so important to you, if saving that 2 hours a day to be able to reinvest with your kids every single day, if that's something so important to you, this is still a reality, but we do need these 3 things to happen. That's right. Yeah, right? So when can you commit back to me on these 3 things so we can make it where you can spend those 2 extra hours with your kids? That's right. Reframing that conversation, right, where it is no, oh, you're denied for a loan, but if you do these 3 things, right, hey, you know, this is still a 100% possibility. Yep. Yeah, right? There's a few, you know, speed bumps that happen, but the cool thing is we know exactly what those are now. Yep. Do these things, And it's just reminding them of that goal of, because we got to keep them resold on it, right? Because I'm
Yep.
sure at some point, if time diminishes, they're not getting the fault, they're not getting reminded of what that goal is,
Yep.
right?
That's why you want to have
easily
those
diminished.
filters in there. Like I always say, if somebody tells me follow up on this date and all of these 3 things done, you follow up and nothing's done, you should have a filter in place. And you should follow that filter every single time. I don't care if you like that person. I don't care how you feel about them. This is a systems process if you want to keep your frictional cost of time down, and your closings up, right? And whatever that filter is for you, maybe where your business is, you're willing to do one more follow-up. You know what I mean? Maybe you're not. Tell the client that at the beginning. I'm willing to do this. I need to see this happen, right? You would be surprised how hard you can push credit challenge clients to say, listen, I'm not going to work with you if you cannot do this. Most people are afraid to say that. That's going to come off as rude. No, everybody else is telling them to pound sand from day one, right? Everybody else just keeps punching them in the gut. You're the one person who's standing up, who has, who has really cared about them, but that has to happen from the beginning. I scold politely loan officers and realtors a lot and say this thing where we talked about at the beginning where I said you're referring someone to a company whose revenue is based on keeping them as long as possible, but you're believing the sales pitch they'll get them back to you as quickly as possible. Yeah. Shame on you a little bit. Right. Now, you probably didn't have any other perception. There's very few companies in the space that do business like ours because most of our space wants guaranteed revenue per client, and we don't have that. We got to actually get work done, But you got to think through those things. You got to talk to your mortgage partner. And I'll tell you this, something for realtors, Joshua, that's so important is to understand this. And every loan officer in the country is about to hate me, okay? The loan officers you're working with know little to nothing about credit. Little to nothing. There's a mortgage company, I'll leave their name out of this, just because I have some NDAs and other products for them and stuff, but we went to do a pilot there, okay? They have some of the top loan officers in the United States. One of their loan officers has been in the top 200 last 5 years in a row. Tried to sell them on us helping them with credit remediation. It's actually another company that I own in the credit space. And they basically said, why would we pay you? Basically, the crux of the service was all loan officers, and this is important for realtors to know, have access to a software called the What If Simulator. They can download digitally from the company they buy the credit report for, and they can literally say, if you paid down your credit card by $100, what would happen to your score? And it will show them instantly. What would happen if you did that same thing and just waited 90 days? They can do all these things. That's what if, right? What if you did this, what would happen, And because these loan officers have this tool, they think they have a handle on credit. And my service was basically, you guys don't know how to run the tool. We have it, and by the way, I've built a software that makes it more accurate. And the response we got was, why would we pay you what we considered an egregious amount of money? I was asking for $1 million contracts, to do something our loan officers already do. And I said, because your loan officers don't know what they're doing, right? And they didn't like that. So I said, here's the deal. Let's do a 4-month pilot. For 4 months, you guys run these simulations, and then you send them over to our team and don't tell us what you ran. We'll do the same client, right? And if you are not closing clients faster with less money out of the client's pocket and higher credit scores, you're going to pay us while we do that. But in the agreement, it's going to say that if we don't hit these matrices, we're insane matrices they thought we could never do. I said, we'll give all your money back. Full refund. You don't owe us a buck. I'll take my team and walk away. We're idiots. You never hear from us again, And I said, but under one condition. You pit us against your top guys. I want only your top best loan officers. The guys are in the top 500 in the country, top 200 on the Scotsman guys. These are the guys I want to battle against, the best, right? And they were like, okay, you guys are going to get destroyed. Week 1, I remember going in, the first plan we did, one of the top loan officers in the company had told the client to spend $3,000 and wait 60 days, right? And they would be like 1 point over what they needed to get in this loan thing. Well, they're supposed to build it, send it to us, we'd build one, and then go back to the client with what they wanted. They had already told the client. So they sent it to us. A couple hours later, we came back and said, no, man, you need $300, not $3,400. And it's going to take 2 weeks, and their credit score is going to be 20 points over what you need. Right? We're using the same tool. It's just the difference is we have credit expertise. We know how the algorithm is built that takes that 10 years of your credit history and pops out that 3-digit score. And we know how to use that tool better than anybody on the planet. You know what I mean? So that was like the difference. So I bring this up because I think it's really important for realtors to know 2 things. One is that all of your loan officers have this ability. And before they send someone to credit repair, they should be using that tool on every single client to make sure that client needs credit repair. Okay. We've gotten into this very lazy thing of going, I can't make a commission, toss them to credit repair. We require, when we start working with loan officers, we require two things. You have to pull credit. I don't care if somebody calls you and tells you they're a 350, you pull their credit. Do the right thing by the client. Get in front of that picture and know what's going on, or we don't want them. Okay, that's step one. Step two is you better use that simulator. And we are so adamant about this that we actually offer training services to loan officers to train them how to use that simulator better. And we'll take guys who've been in it for 10 years. We step in for an hour and they're like, whoa, I didn't know I could do any of this stuff, in this tool. I've been using it for a decade, right? But so my point is that your loan officer you're working with needs to pull credit on every client before they send them to credit repair, and they need to be educated on that simulator. And you should ask them, if you're sending your clients there and trusting them, what credit expert is consulting with you to help you do your job? Because I can assure you they're not getting this training from the companies they work for. I don't care who they work for. There's no company that does this stuff. We get hired to come in and do trainings for loan officers in big groups, 200-300 at a time.
Yeah, what's crazy about this is, my team and I over the years of 13 years of doing this on the real estate side, of sold over 5,000 homes here in the county, and it's like, okay, like if your LO, like because we'll track apps sent to closing ratio, and then obviously the deals that they do give us an approval for, like we know our percentage of those that they're closed, and like those we know that they do a good job on. But how many clients out there, maybe that we got sent to them, told that they couldn't do it, or sent them to a credit repair company, that we advise the client to go through this lender. So it's our ultimate reputation.
Yep.
How many thousands of families are out there right now that think Joshua Smith is a piece of shit? Throughout the industry that I don't even know those negative stories.
Or at least he doesn't care.
Yeah, because I only hear the good stories from like the good files, not the negative of the negative and the compounding of that, because those are the people that just slip the cracks that you never hear from, and they're out there telling stories because maybe they go through somebody else that is relying with a good company like yours. They get them approved. Now they're the hero, and that story's getting told of, no, Joshua Smith wasn't the right of. That's what blows my mind of all those lost opportunities, man.
It's one of two things. Those people either collapse under their own like emotional protection mechanisms, right? Where they get done and they go, I knew this wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
I tried to tell Josh, or the loan officer he sent me to, this wasn't going to work. I have crap credit. I'm never going to own a home, right? Because they keep getting gut punched. You know what I mean? So either does that, or like you said, they go find someone else that is aligned with a company like ours, And we're not the only good company out there, but to be honest with you, there's only about 3 of us that I respect in the whole industry.
Yeah, there's almost 1,000 or so.
1,000?
How many are there out there?
Over 8.
Over 8,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And there's like 3 of us that like really, run. So yeah, and it's unfortunate to see people go through this because, like I said, it's just, you're not going to educate yourself as a consumer on credit. I mean, unless that's what you do as a 40-hour-a-week job. It is so intricate, In fact, we've come out with a series of whiteboard videos lately. So now our clients, every week in the process, they get a new 3-minute or under whiteboard video that helps explain a new piece of the credit and mortgage process to them. So that by the time they get to focusing on that mortgage, you know what I mean? They feel confident. They feel like you referred them to a loan officer who cared about them. And when a loan officer goes, I pulled your credit, I don't mean to regress in conversation, but when a loan officer goes, I pulled your credit and it doesn't qualify, but here's what I did next. I used a proprietary software that lets me reverse engineer your credit report because I wanted to first see if there's stuff you and I could do together to fix your credit. I determined that didn't work. There's nothing you can do. So you do need to engage some professional help. Good news for you is I understand that I'm a loan professional, not a credit professional, and I have aligned myself and all of my clients with the best resource in the industry. And now you send them to a company like Paragon who takes care of them, you know what I mean? And then after that sale again, one of the things we do is, remember I said some of those clients aren't ready, we help clients rerun those simulators again, right? And say, here's what we recommend they do. Let's pair the simulator with that, a piece of software that can run this, and really give them a Loctite plan and go forward. That client is like locked to you for life.
Yeah, it's one of these things where I've been having this conversation a lot, really over the last few months, as we see so many of these iBuyer companies enter the space, and these big companies that are trying to disrupt and Uberize the real estate industry and whatever, and and we've done it to ourselves. Like these companies exist in this space because we as a real estate industry didn't listen to the consumer and give them what they want.
Yep.
I still believe that there's plenty of time to revert this and, with that. But it's like, dude, like I have not been in any mastermind ever when we've had conversations of of what is truly best for the consumer. Yeah, right. It's all lead gen, lead follow up, and again, as we move forward, having these right relationships that are in the customer's best interest, the consumer's best interest, that also allows us to have an element of our business that these other companies aren't going to have, these discounters, whatever. I think more important than ever going forward, this is so important. So now your relationship ends up, obviously it makes sense where it'd be with the lender partner.
Yeah.
So, but you guys are nationwide.
We are.
Right? So,
every state except Georgia.
Yeah. So, and I'm making it a 100% mandate of any of our lenders that we use, if they want our business, that they have to use you guys. Yep. And for our listeners of the podcast that want to do the same, which I highly recommend that you guys do.
Yeah.
How do they do that? How do they ensure that happens? Where do they learn more about you? What information? How do they connect you with their lender partner?
Absolutely. Here's what I would recommend is just send an email to customer service at paragoncreditservices.com. Paragon creditservices.com, and just say, I'm a realtor and I want to know how to connect my clients with your company, right? And based on where you're at and things like that, they'll get you connected with the right person in our company, right? Because we have people that cover different areas, I'm really big on centers of excellence. So when you start working with our company, you'll only ever work with a maximum of 2 people, you and your client, ever. Right? So we, depending on where you're at in your business and stuff like that. And then what we can do is we can connect with you. We can set up a meeting, have someone come out in person or telephonically or whatever, meet with your loan officer and kind of do almost what we've done a little bit today, which is some education on here's why you feel the way you do about the industry, Mr. LO. Here's how things are different. You know what I mean? And then just get you headed down the right path, right?
Yeah. Send your lender this video, this podcast.
That's right. That's right.
And then right below here, we'll make sure to have all your information below, so you'll have that right below this video. So I know we're going long on time here, but I got just 2 main questions I want to ask you before we leave. So you just talked about whiteboard videos, and that was something on my agenda to ask you. Because remember you saying, and you being somebody that is so effective with marketing and sales, talking about the power of whiteboard videos. Yeah, right? So can you just kind of elaborate on, because I don't see a lot of real estate agents using them. Yeah, right, for that education. And whether it's before as a lead trying to get them to become a client, but also educate them through steps of the client journey. Can you kind of elaborate on the power of whiteboard videos and why you believe in them so much?
Yeah, so here's the 100,000 foot overview, right? Is like when we do a lot. Okay, so one quick thing about Paragon. We have a $0 advertising budget. I'm really proud of that. We've grown on average about 35% a year every single year by referral only. Okay. But with my other companies, we definitely do advertising because we're just in different spaces and sometimes you can't get around it. So we've started really tracking things like like Wistia, like heat maps. We can tell where your mouse is at on the screen and within so many degrees where your eyeballs are at. I mean, you'd be surprised what you can track in media nowadays. And what we've learned, and this isn't like stuff that I came up with some secret sauce. We learned this from a lot of other people in the industry watching what they were doing as well and trying and then getting our own matrices, is that whiteboard videos are by far the most watched and get you of any type of media, and they get you the most what I call eyeball acquisition. Okay, which means a lot of people have issues with their marketing because they put something up and like someone goes to a page or whatever and they go, oh, someone's here for 10 seconds. They don't really know if that person's looking at that thing and paying attention to that thing or not. They just know that person's there. Does that make sense? Right? So what we've been able to do is track like what are people looking at, and what are they clicking on and responding to. Whiteboard videos kill everything. I mean, go down Facebook sometime and look at big political ads and stuff you're starting to see using all this. Now, there is a barrier to entry for a lot of realtors, which is that good whiteboard videos are actually insanely expensive at this point. In fact, for that reason, we brought it in-house and do it ourselves. We outsource a small piece of it, of the graphics piece, but everything else is put together in-house, right? The recordings, everything. And so what we've started to do for our partners, and this is another good thing, if you have your loan officer work with us, is we'll give you a section of 16 videos. Okay, and what we recommend is, everybody's going to social media now, right? Why not have we give you free content essentially if you're working with us. So why not maybe you and your loan officer or whoever sit down to a credit corner, watch one of our videos. Even if you don't know anything about that piece of the video, watch it. Now you know. Talk about a couple of tidbits on it on a Facebook Live for 3 to 5 minutes, right? And then flop the link to the video in the bottom, encourage your clients to watch that, right? And you can use these in all kinds of different ways. So I'll take 30 seconds, give you a couple of ways. A lot of people are driving Facebook ads now. One of the things we find with Facebook ads is that if you have a credit box where they can check poor, good, whatever, the poor leads, the credit challenge leads, they tend to respond less. Okay. And so we started to do is talk to our partners and say, well, you probably have an autoresponder series of text set up, right? Text 1 goes out automatically, text 2, et cetera, till the person responds. But nobody's thinking about that empathy piece. Why not put an empathy text in there? Hey, I've sent you 3 text messages. I assume the reason you haven't responded is probably because you've been turned down for a mortgage previously, because I see you marked your credit as poor. I want you to know that I work with people just like you, and I have a defined path to help people get a home. I really encourage you to give me a call. It's a free consultation, right? As the realtor or loan officer, right? You know what I mean? And give them that empathy to show them you care. And then why not have the link right in the text? By the way, here's one of the first pieces of education I always give to my clients to help you start down the road to better credit. And now you give them this awesome whiteboard video they're watching, and they're like, cool, and it's a small piece, just something they can start doing today that's realistic, that every client can do, right? And now you've given them something of value, right? You've given them something of value up front. You spoke about all these masterminds. We talk about the matrices. We don't talk about what the client wants. Give them something of value, So that's what we do a lot of right now for our bigger partners that push us. And I'll just throw this out there, that push us a ton of business. We're starting to do a series of videos for around their businesses as well.
Yeah.
No, they're really powerful. Really powerful.
Yeah. Well, what's cool too, you talk about the automation piece, with like Facebook lead ads, if they're clicking that on there, or even if it's a pop-up, it can automatically then trigger, like you don't have to manually do like if they mark poor, automatically puts them in this follow-up campaign.
Right.
Good on
That's
this.
what I'm saying.
So it's all fully automated.
It should all be fully automated. Again, we want to reduce that time impact, but the problem when we automate stuff is we lose the empathy piece.
Yeah.
And that's why you see realtors and loan officers alike struggle with this. They go, well, I get less results if I'm not calling my client and following up and banging the phones all day. I don't have luck with automating. And it's like, well, because when you're banging the phones, if you have a genuine sound to your voice, people at least get a tidbit of an empathetic human on the other end of the line. You've got to rethink through now this written media to say, how do I really get empathy across and let people know that I care?
Yeah.
Yeah,
love it, man. So last question for you, because I know we're going super long here, but
sorry, I talk too much.
I could pick your brain for hours and hours, dude, if not days. So, one question I ask every guest on the show is, knowing everything that you know now. If Mark today could go back and have a conversation with your earlier self when you first started this entrepreneur journey, and knowing everything you know now, give yourself 2 pieces of advice, right, that you feel would have just fast forward this trajectory to success. Again, knowing everything you know now today, what would those 2 pieces of advice be?
Man, one of these I'm going to really oust myself on here, but I'm going to be honest with you. All right, so the first one would be money doesn't matter. And I want to say something really important around that. It's really easy for me to say because I have done well for myself just like you have, right? And so people look at that and go, it's easy to say when you have money. What I mean by money doesn't matter is you hit it on a couple times throughout this, is like focus on what you're doing. Focus on why you wanted to do this in the first place. And if you find that focus, you only wanted to be a realtor because you saw Joshua Smith cranking $1 million plus a year, you know what I mean? Then recognize you're in the wrong place. But most people probably didn't start for that reason. They started because they wanted time flexibility with their family, right? I hear that a lot from realtors, and they wanted to be able to help people. And it's a really amazing experience helping someone find the home that their family's going to grow up and create memories in. But we lose track of all of that. So money doesn't matter. You talk to any entrepreneur that's built a successful business and look at their business, and they have not, yes, they focus on the metrics, but they've not built it by focusing on the money. You had, I'm brain farting on him now, real estate guy on last week ago or something. You sent me this podcast, Charles.
Oh, Chuck, yeah.
Chuck, yeah. You had Chuck on, and I think Chuck talked a lot about that, even though he didn't speak directly to it, is like just focusing on what his mission and his vision was, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd say like really take a look at that, even when your bills are piling up, and if your business isn't going well. Like for me, what I've learned is it's not about the money. Whenever I focus on the money, and I get lost doing that sometimes, things don't go as well. They just don't. When I focus on what I'm doing and I just, how am I going to make this thing happen? How am I going to do this the best I can for my clients? The money just comes, man. Like it sounds so cliche and you hear it all the time, but you hear it all the time because it works, right? All right. And so that's my first one. The second one is completely unconventional. I would have done psychedelics at a lot earlier age.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a whole nother podcast, but I was very lucky to be introduced to some people around the globe that are very deep in psychedelic culture and the legal psychedelic movement to get medicine approved right now, right? We have MDMA is in its class 3 clinical stages right now. Psilocybin just got put there, which is magic mushrooms, if you're not familiar with that. Okay, these are the best medicines we know, and now that the FDA is letting people study that, we're realizing they work better than anything. Both of these things have been given medical breakthrough status, which is really difficult stuff to get, right? Yeah. It means they work better than anything we know of. That introduction into psychedelics and my experiences with that has changed my perception of the world so much that it's changed my friends, what type of projects I do for a living, who I date, how I live, it has changed every single aspect of my life, so much so that I truly believe if we had like a law that between the ages of like 18 to 21, you had to do like 3 different psychedelic experiences, we would live in a completely different culture.
When you study guys like Steve Jobs, he talks about the power of LSD and
yep.
Like if he's like, hey, if there's one thing that every human being should exist, he's like, it's LSD.
Right.
Yeah, right. So then you've got people that do those for recreation sort of fun, but then people
yep.
that do use them for business. And one of my good friends met through the podcast, but we've had him multiple times, and this is what he does now. He was an extremely successful entrepreneur, but then got very, very depressed and almost committed suicide. And but he just went down to the Amazon jungle to rediscover himself and find himself and fell in love with it. And he actually leads these ayahuasca trips,
okay.
Right? But they're like deep NDA for billionaires that
right.
Whatever that he brings down to the jungle, and and we went into some very deep conversations of the power of things like ayahuasca and what it can do for you. But yep. Can you just give us, because that'll be a whole nother podcast. Yeah, right. Because we're still at the forefront. I think a lot of people are educated by him. Right. And you hear about like a lot of software engineers or the most talented software engineers, let's say in Silicon Valley, that are microdosing mushrooms on a daily basis.
Yep.
And
or LSD.
I've microdosed very heavily on LSD.
Yep.
When I say very heavily, I mean multiple times.
Periods of time.
It's difficult to get, but
yep.
As far as a nootropic and focus standpoint,
yep.
or a meditation standpoint, man,
yep.
it puts you in a different state that you can't get anywhere else. So
yep.
how have you? Just with a quick 60-second as we wrap up here, what has been the power of how you're utilizing those? Because I'm guessing, knowing you and your personality, you're not using them to get freaking wasted. Right? You're utilizing them as a tool to tap
yep.
into.
Yep.
Whether it's the what do they call it, the Akashic record, right?
Yep.
When you hear
Yep.
about guys like Nikola Tesla that are able to tap into, and a lot of brilliance that are able to tap into, how are you utilizing that allows you to kind of tap into that super
So
genius?
I've used them in 2 different ways. One way is like the microdosing, like you talk about, where you can use tiny little amounts where you're not high, right? There's none of that happening, right? But it cues in. I wish I had it here with me. There's this picture on Google I always show people, right? And it's literally a picture of a brain scan, and then they literally in a medical environment put someone on LSD. Right. And then ran them through and did, a full scan of their brain again. Right. And what you find is all these pieces of your brain that don't talk today talk. It opens up these massive, it's a totally different picture. You're like, whoa, what? All these parts of your brain. So it does 2 things for me. One is to kind of help with that focus and dial thing in and open up my brain. Because what we need to realize is we all have walls. Right? We all have walls. Okay. And those are hardwired into our brain. And every time we give into those walls or those trepidations, we cement that hardwiring. It's laying more rebar in the structure, and psychedelics can really just jump over those things instantaneously. Right. And so it does 2 things for me. One, it helps me jump over those walls and see myself differently. That's probably the biggest thing it does, right? It helps me see myself differently, because I can tell you when you shift your perception of who you are in the world, you know what I mean? It just changes everything. It just changes absolutely everything. And the second thing it really does for me is it's helped me find empathy. Yeah. Just due to my childhood and being such a matrices focused guy, and I, most of my career I did really focus on money. That's why I have that clarity not to now, and it's really helped me find empathy, which I really had a hard time experiencing, to be honest with you, before psychedelics. I just didn't have that piece. I could do something, you'd sit there and cry, bawling, it'd just be affecting your entire life, and I'd be like, I don't get it, suck it up. Yeah. And psychedelics again helped me jump over those walls. What it taught me is, it's not that I can't feel this, it's that I have all these walls in place and are hardwired in here, and I need to be able to change a perception, and see myself differently. Well, I'd end that comment with this, is that I build some big art and stuff for Burning Man and all this stuff, right? And almost everything my partner Kate and I do now is about changing perception, because what we've realized is that the best gift you can give someone is one granular moment in time where you can shift their perception about everything. If you look at every disagreement we have, politically, financially, everything as humans, we all want the same thing at the end of the day, right? We want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to help others. Like, this is at the core of being a human, but we all live different experiences, and those experiences shape our perceptions, you know? And psychedelics have helped me change my perception of myself.
Yeah, love it. Powerful stuff, man.
Yeah.
So those watching, listen, I know we end every podcast of this, but information without implementation truly is the start of illusion. Information isn't power. It's taking that information, taking action on it that creates power, or the power for you that is necessary to go out there and create the life that you know you want and deserve. And Mark just shared so many amazing pieces of advice with you guys. Take something that you learned today and go out there and take action on it. So again, you can go out there and create the life that you know you want and deserve. And Mark, man, this has been insane, dude. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, man. It's been a massive honor.
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%, my friend. All right, you guys, we will see you next time. Peace.